whatever you do, the world is not just yours. It's you share it with other people. And by helping people, you're making the world better.
Welcome to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anisa Tova, and today I am joined by an incredible human being. Her name is Mudita Chawla, and she's a powerhouse in a family and matrimonial law. She's a tenacious advocate. She's known for helping clients really navigate some of the life's toughest moments, but with compassion, yet with precision. She's a partner at Shemtop Moss, Foreman and Beta, and has been recognized by super lawyers, Law Dragon 500, and so many more. But today, we're putting the accolades aside and getting to know the real Mudita. Mudita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Denisa, and thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to this for a very long time.
As have I.
And I know we've chatted a little bit here and there, and I'd love to connect the dots today. And one of my favorite questions, and it never really gets old. I am so interested in human stories, and so I'd love to start exactly with that to kick it off. What in your childhood, what drew you to become a lawyer today?
So when I was young, I was quite argumentative, including with my parents. And I don't think that will be a surprise to anyone. And my whole life, both my parents are doctors, and they were like, you should just be a lawyer. And when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to have an incredible history professor who basically was like, you don't need to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life right now, but I think the law would be a really good fit for you. And I went to law school. I did not like law school.
Really?
I went in thinking that it would be very collaborative, thinking that, everyone was there to try to make the world better. And I think I was a little naive when I started law school. I started law school quite young, and the students I was with at the University of Illinois College of Law, most of them did not have the same outlook on what the law was. They were in it, a lot of them were to make lots and lots of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just didn't feel in my freshman year, well, my 1L year, that my personal ethics and my goals with what I wanted to do in my life aligned with a lot of the other students. So I actually left after the first semester and I took a leave of absence. I started a master's in English, and then I realized, you know what? I should actually just finish law school because why not? And I was a TA. So at that time, the University of Illinois paid all my tuition. And so I
Wow.
thought, let's finish law school. I finished law school. I moved to New York, and within a month, I got a job at Sanctuary for Families representing survivors of domestic violence. And it really was the perfect job for me right out of law school because it aligned all the work I was doing in my master's program and the research that I'd been doing on allegories of rape. And, I'd met the director of Sanctuary, Dorchen Lighthold, and she sort of was like, you can be doing something more important than just research. And I thought, perfect. She was like, if you ever come to New York, give me a call. I came to New York. I gave Sanctuary a call, and I started there a month later. And it just really made me feel like I had a job that aligned with my values and also helping people, right? And then I wanted to learn a little bit more, and I wanted to do more than just represent people in family court on orders of protection, child support matters, and custody matters. And that's when I made the transition to Shemtop Moss. It was Shemtop Moss, Foreman at the time, and that was in 2003, and I've been here since then.
What would you say is one of your top values that was instilled in you from your parents?
Helping people. Whatever you do, the world is not just yours. It's you share it with other people. And by helping people, you're making the world better.
Hmm. How do you process when you are dealing with a situation that's, deep down, it's one-sided,
Hmm.
and you feel like you want to do more, and part of you're an advocate, and by nature you want to help and find justice, and yet sometimes you have to sort of maintain the I don't want to say neutrality, but how do you keep it reconciled within yourself so you don't your emotions, are sort of they don't get out of balance and out of control. Like, some practitioners take it on as their own conflict.
Sometimes it's very hard. We spend so much time with our clients. We hear their stories many times. We know such intimate details about their lives that no one else knows. Like I always think like I know the last four digits to my clients' accounts. I don't know the last four digits to my own accounts,
Yeah.
and I think we become really involved that at times it can be hard to step back and look at actually the big picture
Hmm.
versus just we've got this immediate issue to resolve, right? And I think a lot of it also comes with practice and being in the profession for a long time because you realize very quickly that you can't give all your emotions to a client because then you have none left for yourself. And I like to think that I am rational and that I can hear my clients, be compassionate to what they're going through. But my job is really to be their advocate, to try to get them to the end goal, which is being divorced or having custody or whatever it may be. But also knowing that there's a spectrum of results that we can get, especially if we're in court, and educating them on what that spectrum is and trying to convince them that if we land somewhere in that spectrum, it's a good result. And so seeing the forest for the trees, I think, is really important.
Mm. Since you like to make a difference, if you were to change any law within the family law, the matrimonial or divorce law, what would that be and why?
I think when they changed the maintenance laws to have statutory factors that we look at. I think the factors are incredible. I think they're really important both for maintenance and equitable distribution. But I think sometimes having the caps on the maintenance laws make it a little harder because the more moneyed spouse is always saying, well, the cap is 283,
Yeah.
283,000. Why should I pay more than that?
Mm.
And the lesser moneyed spouse is, I can't live on a cap of getting support based on 283,000. And so it's that I appreciate the caps. I think, and I am glad that the caps have consistently gone up. But I think now with the cost of living having gone up so much, those caps can be hard. And I know that judges frequently go above them depending on someone's income, but in mediation and in trying to settle, it becomes really hard for the higher earning spouse to want to go above. And that means you end up having to litigate and make
Mm.
motions over it.
Yeah.
And I think if people were a little bit more realistic about what a court will set the cap at. I mean, if you're making $1 million, there are very few judges who are going to base the cap on 283,000. I think it would save a lot of litigation. If there was a little bit more guideline as to the cap will be 283 if you earn X amount. The cap might have to be a little higher if you earn more.
Stepping outside of the law, you're a big art lover.
I am.
Yeah. How did you cultivate that interest, passion, really?
I have loved art my entire life. And I was the kid who we traveled a lot when I was young, and my parents fortunately had the ability to travel around the world with us. And every place we went to, I always wanted to go to a museum. I think I was probably like the only 7-year-old who was like, I want to go to the museum. And I would always go to the gift shop, and my parents were like, you can buy one thing at the gift shop. And I always chose a book about an artist.
Really?
And that was more important to me than getting other kinds of tchotchkes.
Yeah.
Um, because I wanted to know more about the artists. I wanted to know why they use the medium that they use. Like, what are they trying to say? Because to me, art always felt like, yes, some of it can be beautiful, but it just always felt like more, and I remember the first time I went to the Van Gogh Museum, I was
Mm.
probably 11. And there was an exhibition at the time of all of Van Gogh's floral paintings. So the sunflowers, the roses, the lilies. And I like the first time I saw them in real life, I cried because I thought they were so beautiful, but also knowing that Van Gogh was such a tortured soul made me, even at 11, think like, how can someone who was struggling internally so much create something so beautiful? And I think that has driven me in my love of art and looking at how or why artists are able to do what they can and what are they really trying to say to us, because it
Mm.
is mode of communication as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that there's many artists out there who aren't trying to convey something with their work. They're not just doing it to do it.
No, it's like it becomes commercialized, but
Yeah.
that's interesting. I've always felt that it tells a story, and like my mom, she lives in Prague. She is an artist, and she sort of picked it up later in life, and but would stick to one genre, like oil-based, sort of a heavyish paintings, and they're beautiful. But she would sort of like look down on modern abstract art and other form
Hmm.
of, and I would say, to me it's not about the lines, it's not about the technique. For me personally, it was about the story, because you can see something that seemingly doesn't make sense, but it's what went into that artist's minds, what were they going through. Is it a reflection of their soul and the circumstances and the way they felt at the time? You can take it so many, it's such a great
Ways,
conversation,
right?
right? So many
And
different ways.
and I think especially with abstract art, so much of it is not just about the artist, but about what feelings it evokes in the viewer.
Mm.
And I think abstract art, and I love abstract art, I love figurative, but I think with abstract art, you can have more interpretations. Like, no two people are going to see it the same way. And I think that, like you said, makes it a conversation piece, but also makes you think like, well, how does this make you feel? And I've seen paintings that have evoked a very negative feeling in me, or they disturb me, or they trouble me. And even that is interesting, because what is it about that painting that is evoking this emotion in me, right? So I think it can be a really introspective endeavor, but it is also meant to be a collective and a collaborative experience, because you can talk to someone else about what they're seeing, and they're more likely than not going to see something different.
And that's the beauty, even taking it back to what you do. is you can sort of lean into what's going on and understand without, losing a sense of yourself. And you mentioned a great word, actually, collaborative. So, um, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you had to pick a profession where you couldn't practice a law, and you had to actually pick up a different skill set, what would it be?
I would be a docent at a museum without fail. I mean, and I belong to a group within the Museum of Modern Art called the Contemporary Arts Council. And one of the things that I really love about MoMA is they have so many programs for children, and for children whose families may not be able to afford the admission fee, right? Because it's not cheap.
Mhm.
Um, and I love watching like the groups of kids, especially little kids, go around the museum because it's so fascinating to see what excites them, and then they try to draw it. And it just makes me so happy that more people are being exposed to art, because that's one way that you can broaden your life and you can broaden your horizons and your experiences. And it gives children a really creative outlet that
Yeah.
they may not otherwise have.
I love that. I do love that because I think that's something we're born with until, if you cultivate it or you suppress it as you get older, and you automatically assume, well, you start comparing yourself. I'm not as good as, and maybe I just suck at it. But, and I have found personally that I am artistic, not in the sense of, give me brush and let me start painting. I've sort of always felt awkward in that area or other creative aspects, but where I bring it is to growing the business, the technology. Oh, let's see how we can, resolve that or this, and just sort of thinking in an innovative way. So I love the creative aspect, and to have that for children, especially to have that as an outlet and a form of expression. um, that's tremendously important, and I hope that more schools, will bring it back. And it's I think it's really really important. Um, what when you got into the field, and you explain why you got into the field, when you look back to what it was then and today, what it is today, where do you notice, the big difference is where sort of the law and the profession is going, and are you still feeling as sort of, is it still as fulfilling? Are you feeling the same way about where it's going?
So when I started practicing, like I said, I was at Sanctuary for Families, and I started there in 2000. And a lot of times in court, it felt like I was bearing the weight of explaining to judges and opposing counsel that domestic violence is real, right? It's not just someone coming in to try to gain a leg up on custody or other matters. Now, I think people, for the most part, are more in touch with it. They're more attuned to the fact that there is domestic violence. It's not just in the lower economic classes. It's not just in a particular segment of the population. It does impact people who live on Park Avenue, because there are different forms. There's economic, there's psychological, there's coercive control. And I think that shift within our society in general, I think is important, because it makes people recognize that there are different means of power and control that one person can exercise over the other, and it impacts every aspect of their life. And I think people just being attuned to that is really important, because it's how you get not only the best result for your client, but also a secure and safe result
Yeah.
for them.
And that's
I think
important.
that's the biggest shift where, you know, sometimes I still do feel like we have to educate certain people, but I think it's a lot less than it was 25 years ago. And now the fact that the domestic relations law require you to take domestic violence into consideration when you're determining custody matters is really important. I think that's an incredible shift in the positive direction.
Yeah, I was really thrilled to hear about someone even talking about the different and less obvious ways that this can manifest and educating the public. It's hugely important, and it is happening. And sometimes it's happening, under our nose because we simply did not know how to recognize the signs. I call it like the sort of the quiet, wound,
Mhm.
if you will. So that's it's definitely moving in a great direction. So you're also avid traveler, and I don't mean, you I don't know, 3 times a year, you take a plane trip to, another state. You really, really travel the world. Tell me about Tell me about what are some of your top places? I'm not going to ask you about the place that you've enjoyed and why, but what would be on the top of your list?
Japan surprised me that I loved it so much. I knew I would like it. I just didn't think I would love it so much. I love it. It's incredible. The people are so kind. They're so thoughtful. Like there's no trash on the street in Tokyo. It doesn't smell the way New York can smell in the summer sometimes. Um, I love Morocco. I also think it's just so culturally fascinating. I also love Malta because it's one of those places where there have been so many different cultural influences. There's been the Arab influence, there's been the Spanish influence, there's been the French influence. There's just so much, and it's kind of a really cool mix of experiences. And I love India. Like it's a country of extreme contrast, and there are so many things that I think as an outsider could be better for the people, but it's so beautiful and so vast and so varied. There are hill stations that have snow where people can go skiing, and you don't usually think of that when you think of India, right? Like you think of
Yeah.
every place being really hot and humid and the monsoons. And yes, that definitely exists, but the hill stations are beautiful. They're just beautiful. Like they're so serene, and it's hard to believe that that much contrast can exist in a country. And Australia. My dad lives in Australia, so I go there quite often, and it's a wonderful, like I love it. I always think that it's like the US, but 10 to 15 years behind. So it always feels it has like this nostalgic sense for me for some reason.
Yeah. Wow,
But they're
that's
also like much more advanced you know, their in their recycling. Like everybody does it. Everybody composts. Like there's no question about it. It's just you do it, and you're the odd person or the outcast if you don't. And I kind of love that, and I think especially for that country because they've had so much ozone depletion, everyone is hyper aware of
mm,
the damage the sun can cause. And you go to a restaurant at the beach and they will have like this giant tub of sunscreen that people can just use,
wow.
and nothing, you can't even buy anything below SPF 50 in the country. It's really hard. Well, you can, but it's really hard to find.
Yeah, interesting. What a great experience. And I think everybody, if they have an opportunity, should travel and experience that. It's like it's a school of life. I I'm so grateful, to my mom that allowed us to spend a few years in China and get exposed to different culture, and coming from Eastern European country to US, and still traveling. There's still
Mhm.
so much to get to know. And yeah, it's gosh, I could talk to you forever. So on a parting thoughts, anything you'd like to share with our viewers?
So part of the reason I get to travel so much now, even as an adult, is because I belong to the International Academy of Family Lawyers, which is an incredible organization. And it really is, the top attorneys in the countries. And you get to meet so many different attorneys and you get to learn so much. And it just makes my experience of being a lawyer so much more meaningful and so fulfilling, knowing that if I have an issue with Germany, I know an attorney that I can message and they will get on the phone, and I think that just enables me to help my clients as well in so many more ways. For like if they have property in Germany, what would we need to put in our New York agreement to make sure that that property can be transferred over to one party or can be sold? And I think it just makes me a better lawyer knowing some of the things about other countries, but also having the contacts in those countries to be able to get the best result for my client.
The resources. Yeah,
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 they're invaluable.
yeah. Wow. Well, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for sharing your story, a part of your incredible story. I know there's so much more. I really, really found it incredibly enriching.
Well, I'm really grateful for you reaching out and asking me to do this. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I think the work you do, besides all the podcasts, is also incredible, which because I'm always emailing you about things. And just again, thank you so much for including me in this wonderful experience.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. And for our viewers and listeners to find out how to get hold of Mudita, we have linked the website below and a bio. And please do not forget to follow us on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and all social media channels. And make sure that you tune in for more behind the scene conversations with inspired leaders like Mudita. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.
Thank you. Bye.